Tonight, though, our speaker is Greg Tasker. Greg is a widely published freelance writer and the assistant editor for the Detroit News for the last 3 years. His duties at the Detroit News are to assign and edit stories for the daily business section and oversee reporters covering Michigan companies. He also supervises the retail, green technology, and business of health care sections of the paper and edits the weekly car culture section entitled Drive. Previously, he was deputy bureau chief at the Baltimore Sun and a reporter at the Patriot News. Is that the one in Harrisburg? Yes. Pennsylvania, very good. Mr. Tasker possesses a bachelor's degree in journalism from Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, not Ohio State University, so we don't have to give you a hard time about that. And a master's in public affairs reporting from the University of Illinois in Springfield. Tonight's topic, of course, is Greg's book about Saunders Confectionery, and of course for the last 130 years there's been no sweeter name in Metro Detroit. The Confectioner was once as much a part of southeastern Michigan as the Big Three. A Detroit icon, it served a fountain of memories for generations. At its peak, the company had over 50 stores, including the much beloved Grosse Pointe store, which opened in 1934, closing in the mid-90s, only to reopen down the street in 2005. So happy to see that that's back. On a personal note, my favorites are hot fudge cream puffs, the hot fudge topping, and dark chocolate honeycomb chips, which we have in the back, and bumpy cake and caramel cake. So you can tell that I need to lose some weight. It was very fortunate that Morley's purchased the company, though, in 2004, and that it's still around after 134 years. I'll give you that Greg Tasker. Thank you, Greg.
Good evening.
Evening.
We're all here because we have an affinity for Detroit's best known and most beloved confectioner. It's a company that traces its roots back more than a century and a quarter, and at one time, not so long ago, was as familiar in Detroit and its suburbs as fast food restaurants and chain drugstores are today. Notice I have not yet mentioned this company by name. The pronunciation of its name remains a matter of debate in many homes and offices across Metro Detroit.
Yeah.
So I ask you, do you say Sanders or Saunders? Well, according to a very reliable source, the great-grandson of the founder, the correct pronunciation is Sanders. The mispronunciation, Jack Sanders believes, stems from the German origins of the name. The founder of the company himself, Frederick Sanders Schmidt, was born in Germany, but moved to the United States as a toddler, and this is where the Sanders story begins. In this picture, Frederick Sanders Schmidt is about 30 years old, and it's around the time he opens a store in Detroit in 1875. He is not a Detroit native. In fact, his Detroit store will be his second or third business venture. He comes from a family of bakers who immigrated to the United States from Germany when Frederick was 1. They settle in downstate Illinois, and Frederick learns the baking trade from his father. At 17, he sails for Germany to learn the secrets of confectionery and catering. He opens a small shop in Frankfurt, and although it's successful, he longs to return to the New World. He spends some time in Philadelphia and Chicago, either working for other confectioners or running his own shop before moving to Detroit around 1875. This is a very rare photograph of the very first store on Woodward Avenue near State Street. Frederick chooses to use his middle name for his confectionery, so not to appear to compete with his father's bakery in Illinois. The store opens on June 17, 1875. Because Fred uses all his money to open the shop, he has to borrow a barrel of sugar to make his chocolates. Not much is known about the first store, except that Sanders sells candy, cream sodas, and ice cream. No one seems to know why he chose Detroit, except that the city was growing and prosperous. He had been in Chicago, but the Great Chicago Fire a few years earlier either burned him or his employer out of business. According to Sanders family lore, Fred dashed out of work ahead of the fire to get home to rescue his pregnant wife and their toddler son. They then fled with Sanders pulling his wife in a carriage away from the fire. The confectionery's open does not go unnoticed. Below the picture is an account that appeared in the Detroit Free Press. Can everybody read that? His chocolates are well received, but Sanders feels his business is too far north of the central business district to succeed. So he moves to his second location on Woodward toward Michigan Avenue in 1876, and here he prospers. Eventually he expands all the way to the corner of Michigan Avenue with the construction of the Baroque Pavilion of Swedes, and it quickly becomes the social center of the city, attracting theater crowds, baseball players, and politicians. At this store, Sanders is one of the first companies in Detroit to use an electric motor. It's used to crush ice in the ice cream making process. The motor, however, had a tendency to break down, and Sanders was about to get rid of it, until the Edison Illuminating Company sent over a young mechanic to fix it. His name was Henry Ford. The motor worked well after Ford's tinkering. Here is yet another location, a temporary one for Sanders. His location in the central business district was prime real estate, and he is forced to move to make way for the city's first skyscraper, the Majestic Building. He is only at 180 Woodward Avenue, shown in this picture, for a short time before returning the block that made him a success. Unfortunately, not much is known about this store. In 1896, Sanders returns to the same block, occupying space formerly used by J.L. Hudson's. This store becomes the downtown store, initially known as the Palace of Sweets. Built sometime after the Civil War, the structure was shaky, but the crooked floors came in handy at tax assessment time. After seeing an orange roll across the slanting floor, the assessor would lower the building's tax value. About this time, Fred Sanders tells a journalist that his store sells as many as 14,000 glasses of ice cream soda on some summer days. This store undergoes renovations over the years to make room for candy production, a cafeteria, and a bakery as the company grows and prospers. Even though Sanders moves up and down Woodward over the years, each location serves as the company's only store. But in 1913, the company buys 100 feet of property along Woodward Avenue at Henry Street. This becomes the company's second standing store and a plant as well. Sanders expects the plant to be sufficient for years to come, but by 1919 adds 3 more floors to meet the needs of a growing company and demand for its products. At the time of this photo, Sanders has 9 retail stores owned or leased in the city. The first store away from downtown will open in 1919 at Woodward and Grand Boulevard. This building stood until just a few years ago when it was raised to make room for a parking lot before the Super Bowl. Over the years, the Palace of Sweets, which eventually becomes known as the downtown store, undergoes major remodeling. While not quite as ornate as the original Palace of Sweets, the store seen here in the 1930s or 1940s retains a sense of elegance, remains a favorite among downtown shoppers and other workers. This scene shows the soda fountain, bulk candy counters in the rear, and a stairway leading to the basement cafeteria. Notice the elaborate lights and the marble foundations of the countertop and the marble floor. Sanders used the finest materials available in building its stores. Long before there were fast food restaurants as we know them today, there was the Sanders lunch counter. Sanders was a quick place to get something to eat. Businessmen could count on being in and out in about 20 minutes. It was not uncommon to find someone sitting at the counter and people lined up 2, 3, or 4 deep behind them. Popular lunch staples at this time include tuna salad, egg salad, and minced ham. The lunch menu also included soups, salads, and a variety of rolls and special plates. The first store in the suburbs opened in Highland Park in 1930. 9 years later, Sanders had 21 stores in and around Detroit, including Royal Oak, Dearborn, and Grosse Pointe. By the 1970s, Sanders had more than 50 stores, and at its peak, would have nearly 60 retail outlets in Metro Detroit, Lansing, and Ohio, as well as selling its products at department stores and grocery chains and drugstores. With its success, Sanders became very active in the community and was a regular in the Thanksgiving Day Parade. This is a Sanders float in the 1937 Thanksgiving Day Parade. It depicts the first ice cream soda fountain at the very first store. Note that the float makes claim to Sanders being the originators of the ice cream soda. For a long time, Sanders, at least locally, was credited with creating the ice cream soda. The story goes that during that first or second summer of business, newlyweds came in for a cream soda near closing time. Fred discovers his cream is sour, and not wanting to lose a sale or a customer, he substitutes ice cream in the soda and doesn't tell them. The couple likes it so much that they return the next night for another, and then again with friends. The ice cream soda becomes a big hit, and for a long time, Sanders is known as that little soda place back there in Detroit. But the credit for creating the ice cream soda has since gone to a Philadelphia soda fountain manufacturer who accidentally created the concoction just before Sanders. Holidays, of course, were big business for Sanders. This photo is a display from a Sanders store on Sweetest Day 1929. Sanders windows were often filled with elaborate displays to celebrate Mother's Day, the 4th of July, Christmas, Valentine's, Easter, and other holidays, including Sweetest Day. A holiday many have blamed on Sanders, but actually traces its origins to a Cleveland candy maker who gave chocolates and candies to orphans and other disadvantaged people. Here is an Easter candy display from 1930. Sanders held contests to see which managers could create the best window display. Many of them won national contests. This is a more contemporary in-store Easter display at the Lincoln Park store at Southfield and Dix. Here, workers at the Highland Park plant are packaging Valentine's heart-shaped boxes. Sanders moves its headquarters and manufacturing operations to a 9-acre site on Oakland Boulevard in Highland Park in 1941. The 400,000 square foot plant produces everything under the Sanders brand and remains in operation until the 1990s. Sanders begins printing daily menus as early as the 1920s. They include the company's regular fare, daily specials, and special announcements. By the time this menu was published, Sanders boasted 13 locations, most of them in the city, and also sold its products at jail Hudson's and some local markets. On this menu, ice cream is 10 cents, a slice of pie is 10 cents, a hot fudge sundae is 10 cents. This 1933 menu also announces that Sanders' downtown store will be open until 11 p.m. to help President Roosevelt's recovery program by giving more work to more people. This 1937 menu varies little from the 1933 menu. The prices are mostly the same. Like other menus, it features Sanders' popular Devil's Food buttercream cake, now known as bumpy cake. How the cake originated is unknown, but it was served at Sanders stores as far back as the 1920s. The cream hot fudge, something we know as the hot fudge cream puff, is listed as a pastry on the menu and sells for 15 cents. Printing daily menus was a huge undertaking, and the company eventually combined lunch and dinner menus like this one from 1959. Prices have only gone up slightly in 2 decades. A hot fudge sundae is 25 cents. A scoop of ice cream is 20 cents. For many years, Sanders menus included the wording, "No tipping, please." It's a policy that began when Fred's son-in-law took over the business after his death, and it remained in effect for many years and was only lifted after the company began opening more and more stores in the suburbs. The company eventually hired a menu designer and went to permanent menus in the 1960s. The earliest stores featured cream sodas, ice cream, and candy. Sanders ice cream toppings are believed to have come around the mid-1920s, created by an inventive soda jerk. The secret of the toppings lies in cooking them like a batch of fudge. In newspaper accounts in the 1980s, there are references to 25,000 hot fudge fiends flocking to Sanders each week. A hot fudge sundae then sold for $1.35. This photo from the 1980s, you'll notice the famous cone-shaped paper cup, which were used right up until the last stores closed in the mid to late 1990s. The unseen clerk is pouring hot fudge on ice cream plates and cream puffs at an unidentified store. No one really knows when the hot fudge cream puff was concocted, but it probably had something to do with the inspiration of a baker and a confectioner. This is a photograph of a taffy puller at the Highland Park plant in 1981. Here's another photograph of candy production at the Highland Park plant. In the early days, before there was production space at the Pavilion of Swedes, Fred Sanders would work all day in his shop and then return home to make candy in the kitchen with his wife. In a newspaper story, Sanders recounts working at his shop until 11 p.m. and then making candy until 2 or 3 in the morning and returning to open his shop at 6 a.m. Batches were made almost every night for sale the next day. The roof of the couple's Napoleon Street kitchen leaked, and on rainy nights, Mrs. Sanders had to hold an umbrella over her husband while he worked over the candy pots. Fred Sanders had plans to return to baking before his death in 1912. The company began baking bread and other products at the downtown store the following year. Sanders made a variety of cakes and donuts. Its popular cakes include colonial buttercream, caramel, and devil's food buttercream or bumpy cake. The company made 28 varieties of donuts. Its most popular cookies were the Hermit, chocolate chip, peanut butter, and oatmeal raisin. Pie staples included coconut custard, lemon chiffon, mince, apple, cherry, and chocolate nut. Baking eventually becomes 35% of the company's business. The opening of each new store was announced in the newspaper. This one announces the opening of a store in the Lincoln Park Shopping Center at Dixon Southfield. This is the second Royal Oak store at the Northwood Shopping Center at 13 Mile and Woodward. The first Royal Oak store opened in 1935 in the Washington Square building on Washington Boulevard. It was the company's 17th store. Both stores closed in the 1980s. Opened in the 1970s, the West Bloomfield store at Maple and Telegraph underwent a major renovation in the 1980s. The remodeling was part of the company's efforts to revitalize its business. This is a mall designed for stores outside of Metro Detroit. This is the mall store in either Lansing or Toledo. Growth in the suburbs also meant opening stores at Detroit malls, as well as soda fountains and displays in grocery stores. By the late 1970s, Sanders was available in all the major local chains, including Farmer Jack, Kroger, Great Scott, Chatham, and A&P. This photo is one of the downtown stores. There were at one time 8 Sanders stores along Woodward Avenue. This one was located at 1525 Woodward Avenue. This building actually still stands. In many ways, this looks like a typical mall Sanders in the 1970s. With a nod to the company's past, the store features contemporary soda fountain tables and chairs. This is the basement level of the Eastland Mall store, taken after remodeling in the 1970s. The basement previously offered cafeteria service. This is a more modern photo of the downtown store, formerly the Palace of Swedes. The year is 1963. A fire in the 1950s damaged the top floors. The company renovated the building, dropped a couple floors, and created a more contemporary look. The store will remain open until the early 1980s, closing a short time after J.L. Hudson's. This is the last day of business at the second Royal Oak store in 1988. Sanders stores began closing in the mid to late 1980s, and all of them would be closed a decade later. By the late 1990s, after surviving some financial troubles in earlier decades and a change of ownership, the last of the remaining original Sanders stores closed. Ice cream toppings and candies remain available at stores and are made by Sanders Candy, a division of Morley Brands LLC, which also traces its roots to Detroit. Two years after buying the Sanders brand, Morley opened a Sanders candy dessert shop at Laurel Park Place Mall in Livonia. A year later, Morley opened another Sanders on Kirchhoff in Grosse Pointe. It is not in the same location as the original Grosse Pointe store, which opened in 1934. This is yet another new Sanders store on Bicknell Avenue in Wyandotte, which opened in the fall of 2005. This is an interior shot of the Wyandotte store with a small countertop for ice cream and other desserts. And believe it or not, there is a Sanders on Mackinac Island. The store, located in the Lakeview Hotel, opened in May. It holds the distinction of being the most northern Sanders store ever to exist. The store has less than 500 square feet of retail space, but sells all of Sanders' products. It's also became a hot spot for fudge over the summer, despite a rich history of fudge making on the island. Unlike some of the other fudge makers, Sanders uses evaporated milk in its recipes, creating a richer, smoother confection. Just a few weeks ago, Sanders opened a new store at the 12 Oaks Mall in Novi. It's simply called Sanders. It's a prototype of stores to come. Design, stock, t-shirts, mugs, and hats. It features the company's new logo as seen above the store entrance. The new logo will be seen on packaging beginning as soon as January. Unlike the other stores, the Novi Sanders features a lunch menu with familiar favorites: chicken and tuna salads, soups, and combination plates. These are the same recipes Sanders used way back when to make these salads, but with today's ingredients. All the Sanders dessert staples are here, with the addition of cookies made with pieces of Sanders candies. While the store boasts a contemporary look, it still evokes nostalgia, not only with the historic photo in the entrance, but with a wall-sized timeline chronicling the company's rich history. And Sanders is not done growing. More stores are being planned, but where and when has not been decided. New displays are being made for retail outlets. The Morley store in downtown Rochester will soon become a Sanders store. And the Morley candy sign outside the company's headquarters on Hall Road in Clinton Township will soon be changed to add Home of Sanders Candy. And that concludes the slideshow. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
When did the Grosse Pointe store close?
I think in the mid to late 1990s.
It was almost exactly 10 years, so it was 95, I believe, because the other one opened in November of 2005. Yeah.
And it was the location where Caribou was caught
Yes.
right now.
Mhm. That's where the plaque disappeared.
Yes.
Are you from Detroit, you know, with Ohio?
Yeah. I grew up in Troy.
Oh, very good. And Morley's traces its history back to 1919. And when I knew it as a kid, they were in East Detroit. They still got the outlet store there, but their factory's on Hall Road.
Correct.
But they started where in Detroit, do you know?
I'm not sure where they started, but I think Mrs. Morley actually worked for Sanders at one time before they went to business for themselves.
I thought they were around Gresham.
Okay, so the east side on Gresham
Yeah,
Avenue.
I thought.
That's what I thought. I thought I heard too at one time. Okay. Okay. On the west side. On Warren Avenue. Okay.
Any other questions?
Questions? Good. Well,
Back in the olden days, it was all the
okay, good.
Saunders. And I wonder when they changed the pronunciation.
According to the family, never.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's been Sanders or Saunders since way back when.
I never agreed.
Well, I'd go back too far, I guess.
He may have had a heavy, Fred Sanders may have had a heavy accent. He would confuse.
I thought he said Saunders, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, do you know what the main reason was for the financial difficulties they had, why some of these stores closed?
Well, I know that they filed for bankruptcy at least 3 times in the 70s and 80s. And then there was a change of ownership. I think, from what I've been told, that they were very heavy on management and administration, which added greatly to their costs. And that and not keeping up with changing tastes and times, I think, all played a role.
They're making a comeback though, slowly, huh?
Very slowly. I think we're lucky that Morley bought the brand and held on to it. At the time that the last owner was selling the company, Elias Brothers was looking to buy Sanders. But their goal was to buy the brand and sell the hot fudge exclusively at their restaurants. You would not have been able to buy it anywhere else.
Hmm.
So it pretty much would have been the end of anything.
And when you say the ownership changed, when did the family sell then? In the 80s? 88, I think?
It was probably the late 80s.
Yeah.
And they had brought, over the years, they had brought in other investors to help run the company to bring it back up to,
But his son-in-law took over when he died in 1912,
he did. And then one of his other sons eventually took the helm later on,
and then a grandson,
a great grandson.
or great-grandson who was there. Oh, that's right,
He's still alive.
there was a non-family member in between, and then his great-grandson ran it until the family sold it in the 80s. Well, he ran it into the late 70s, right? And then
he stepped down.
he stepped down, but then owned it until the late 80s, okay. That's what I was thinking too.
Yes.
I'm sure many people everybody's familiar with the Detroit Historical Museum. I just attended a meeting about a week ago. And they're planning to renovate the streets of old Detroit. And in the 1870s, where the current firehouses, they're going to put a Sanders store.
Really? Wow. I would think it would be over with the Verner's ginger ale.
It's 1870s.
Yeah, so it would have been earlier, so they're going to put it over on that side. Okay, interesting. Ah, very good.
I didn't know that.
Didn't know that either. Any other questions? Well, we've got candy in the back, and Greg's going to be here signing books out in the lobby, so we want to thank him for coming. Thank you so much to all of you.